My bearded bastards, let me ask you a question. Has your life grown dull? Do you long for the rage of battle? The frenzy of mortal struggle? Of glorious death? Then allow me to welcome you back to Splatterface! The cradle of heroes, the tomb of legends. We find ourselves once again at the foot of the screaming peaks, where 12 bloodthirsty gladiators will be put to the test, and only one will emerge as champion. But who? Who will claw, will rend their way to the top? This is a question whose answer we will find by the end of this, our second annual Splatterface tournament. Now, before we get started with the games, we should first outline how these coming days will pan out. First and foremost, before we do a blessed thing, rule number 1 going into this year's festivities, and remember it well. Are you ready for this? Listen up. These fights won't necessarily be fair. There are no rules in the arena, much like on the battlefield. Equipment, combatant size, skill level, all will be at least slightly unbalanced, and if you don't like it, just know, going in, that you've been warned. And if you don't think you can handle it, then you can get the hell out of here. And with that out of the way, we can get down to the few rules that we do have. And even then, you should remember that the rules we do have are subject to ridiculous changes at any time, depending on the whims of arena management or even to you. Just gotta yell loud enough, I suppose. The arena is about entertainment in its purest form, and if a rule has to be broken to further that end, so be it. But yes, the rules. Like last year, we once again have 12 combatants who will be paired up at random to fight to the death. Round 1 will consist of 6 bouts, round 2 of 3 bouts, and the third round will consist of a single titanic 3-way battle. But that's not all. This year we have an additional round. A round that will see the winner of this year's Splatterface face off against one last challenge. One last duel for the gold against the reigning champion of Splatterface. That's right. You know him, you love him. Let's hear it for the Battle Beetle. Fully armored and wielding his marvelous short sword, our champion has been training all year long for the fight ahead. And you can rest assured it will not be an easy battle for whoever gets that far. As was the case last year, bouts will take place every other day, unless hiccups arise. Things can be a little bit unpredictable in the arena at times, so your patience is appreciated. Now on to the rules of the fight. Not much is off the table once a bout commences. Cheap shots, dirty tactics, and anything a combatant can think up is fair game. The two sides will face off and battle until someone falls, but that doesn't quite seal it. In order to win, the last one standing must survive the duration of a timer. Five anvil strikes. Then and only then will a fighter be declared winner of the match and pass on to the next round. Better hope you don't lose too much blood by that 5th anvil ting, warriors. By winning a bout, the victor will also receive a prize. You may remember that last year it was decided that a bout's winner could have their choice of a single piece of gear from their opponent's garb. But this year things are going to be a little bit different. Upon winning, a combatant may choose to upgrade one of their existing pieces of equipment or choose something new entirely. Anything they want, for the most part. Armor, weapons, hell, they could even take a piece from their opponent's carcass if they wanted. The loser is certainly not going to be using it anymore. Last year's tournament went so well that this year we've been able to afford to equip our warriors very well. There's no need to go scrounging about in your opponent's corpse anymore. Also, before we move on, I'll note that unlike last year, there will be no teams participating in this year's events, which I'm sure more than a few of you complainers out there are happy about. Let it be known that this was not my decision, by the way. This new rule was put into place by our current reigning champion, the Battle Beetle, who has deemed losing one's teammates too high a price to be paid for glory. Not sure we see eye to eye on that one, but he is the champion after all. And so what he says goes. That'll do it for most of our rules, and I'm sure you're all getting fairly anxious. So without further ado, I present to you this year's Splatterface combatants. First up, we have a feisty little fighter who has trundled in from across the burning wastes in the east. I give to you Karaka, the armadillo woman. Armed with a razor-sharp sword and covered with layers of protective plates, Karaka is acting as the voice of her near-forgotten people, in hopes that by winning here, new life can be brought to her home. Well, you'll have to hope your equipment and skill can offset your small size, Karaka. Good luck out there. Up next, we have a somewhat familiar face. I present to you a local dwarf who hails from right here in the Screaming Peaks. Torelnil, daughter of Kashnil, the dwarf who fell during last year's events. Torelnil is modestly armed with her buckler, warhammer, and her father's bronze helm. At first looks, one might think Torelnil is a little under-armored, as her father was. But this dwarf here has something that her father did not. A burning thirst to cleanse her family's name, and to bring honor to her late father. Something that's sure to get her far in the arena. Our next fighter comes from the outskirts of the jungles of purple mist. A hulking, armored beast. Grunt the Orangutan. Yes, an orangutan. An orangutan encased in a sturdy shell of bronze and bearing some impressive strength to boot. Now, it could be easy to underestimate a big dumb ape fighting out in the glorious arena, but it's wise to note that Grunt is one of the largest fighters participating this year. It'd be easy picturing this guy popping the head off of one of our many other competitors. We have another somewhat familiar face coming up next. A whirling tornado of razor-sharp blades with a noble bearing. I present Lord Whitefur, the Jumping Spider-Man. Brother to the late Whitefur lost last year, Lord Whitefur has his eyes set on the top, the throne of Splatterface's reigning champion, his sister's killer, the Battle Beetle. Whitefur's 6 savage blades hunger for vengeance, and he will have it. Truth be told, he seems to be a formidable foe indeed, and if I was a fighter, that is one spider I would not want to face. Coming in next, we have a tiny fighter who has won his fair share of battles using an unconventional weapon. Laidlore the Kobold. A bizarre combo indeed. A kobold and his ladle. But before riding off this diminutive gladiator, you must be made aware of the sheer amount of training Laidlore has with his weapon. This little kobold boasts an impressive fighting history and knows his chosen weapon very well. Laidlore promises to be an interesting fighter in this, our second Splatterface tournament. Keep your eyes on this one. Our next fighter is a bit of a homebody. In fact, home is never far behind. Slow and steady wins the race for Bunyan, the snail person. Garbed in a sheet of bronze mail and boasting an impressive shell, Bunyan seems to be well equipped to defend their naturally soft body from any attack. Bunyan comes to us led by their appetite for victory alone. Literally, Bunyan is hungry and plans to spend their winnings on a warrior's feast. Unsalted food only, of course. And better skip the booze just to be safe. Good luck to you, snail. Up next, we have our strangest competitor yet. A towering monolith found alone in the ruins of a long-forgotten fortress. Relic, the Iron Man. A true first here. We have our first inorganic gladiator, and one who is sure to perform quite well this year. Not much is known of the origins of this gladiator, other than that they were found amongst the wreckage of 100 similar constructs. The last of their kind, perhaps. Oh, and something else we do know is that Relic has a bit of a secret weapon. A gaseous fog that has given arena coordinators a run for their money. Best to cover your faces while Relic's on the scene, fighters. Gliding in from the Lake of Whispers and Dreams, we have Song, the Swan Man. An aged competitor with more than his fair share of skill at clothes making, a reputation that far exceeds that of his fighting prowess. Who could say why the gentle Swan Man has come to the arena? He had better hope those steel blades of his can cause opponents down to size in a hurry, and with his ability to fly, that could very well be the case. Don't underestimate this one, people. There's still more than enough fight left in those old bones. Coming up, we have yet another shelled figure to add to our roster. An imposing figure with a deadly smile. It's Kruggsmash, the Snapping Turtleman. Having dragged himself out of the recently ruined goblin pit, the Spire of Maggots, Kruggsmash is mad as hell and would love nothing more than to take out that rage on our competitors. I'm sure it doesn't help that it was a unit of Splatterface soldiers that ruined the pit, eh? Well, if we get a particularly entertaining gladiator out of the deal, then we'll take it as a double win. Tell you what, Turtle, if you make it to the top, you can fight me one-on-one. Good luck, you bastard. A cold-blooded killer is up next. This monstrous fighter is by far our largest competitor this year. Allow me to introduce Iceberg, the Leopard seal woman. If this was a battle of size alone, Ice here would win hands down. But we have to take into account her fairly bare setup. A spear and helmet are her only armaments, though I'm more than willing to bet it can do the trick against the others, especially when paired with her size and prodigious muscles. One thing's for certain, I'd hate to find myself on the other side of her spear. A nasty thought indeed. A glory-starved fighter approaches the ring next. Stand and applause for a lion-hearted fighter whose flowing mane demands your admiration. It's Goldman, the lion Tamarind woman. Another fighter who hails from the jungles of purple mist, Goldman has had to learn how to fight, and fight well, in order to survive. Something she does as a matter of fact. Confidently wielding a buckler and battle axe, Goldman seeks to brush away the competition and claim the prizes she deserves. Though, with her small size, she had best not get too overconfident. There's still a long, bloody road ahead. Last up, and certainly not least, we have a special competitor. I'd love for you to welcome a familiar face who you all know very well. Someone we all know to be faster, more daring than the rest. Someone whose skyborn acrobatics have already stolen our hearts, our souls, and our brains. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Melville, the Monarch Butterfly Man. Yes, this last fighter is sponsored by the fine people over at Melville's Monarch Butterfly Brains. Purveyors of the finest butterfly brain spread known, and with a flavor that will get you butter flying. Did they really write this? But yes, Melville, armed with a spear and gloves and like little booties and a power-packed butterfly brain. Melville is really something else. Let's just place this guy as a bit of a wild card, I'm thinking. Good luck out there, though I'm sure you won't need it. Now then, that's going to do it for our fighters this year, and I'm thinking that before we go getting them paired up, we should get them all out in the field to see how they size up to each other, eh? Could be important, especially when there's gold on the line. Yeah, there we go, all lined up. You can see how many small fighters we have out there, with the Kobold being the smallest, and Iceberg by far the largest. Hopefully this gives us all a slightly better idea of how things will pan out, eh? Start planning those bets, people. Yes, sir, it's a rowdy bunch of fighters this year who promise to put on an exciting performance. But who will be fighting who, you ask? Well, let's find out, shall we? First up, we have Relic versus Goldman. Then Iceberg versus Song. Melville versus Bunyan. Grunt versus Whitefur. Laidlore versus Kruggsmash. And last up, Karaka versus Torelnil. There we have it, folks. These coming days are sure to be filled with excitement unlike anything you've seen before. And so for now, I suggest you sit back, take a load off, get your bets settled, of course, and prepare yourselves for this, our second Splatterface tournament. And until then, you bearded bastards.